Hey, it's Fanuel here, your host of Questions of the Day, where I take you on my journey around the world to uncover the practice of civic science in order to understand who does what, where, when, how, and everything in between. For those returning, thank you so much for following me on this journey. And for those of you joining me for the first time, welcome aboard. In this conversation, the founder of the Plenary, Stephanie Fine Sasse, tells me this.
So we're really interested in understanding what are those conditions for folks? What gets people excited? What gets them inspired? Because I think, a lot of the pushback we get for programs like this is, but what's the deliverable? What's the outcome at the end?
Buckle up for the surprising answers as we take a deeper dive into ripple metrics. This is something Stephanie told me about quite a bit in our last conversation, which I encourage you to check it out. So she gives us 3 additional examples: bartender observations, to personal transformations, to artifacts created through photo documentation. It's full of wonderful insights around this idea of ripple metrics. And yes, this all happened, the conversation, on the sidelines of the 2025 ASTC conference in San Francisco, California. I am so thankful for Stephanie for taking the time to chat with me. And so join me as we learn some more about ripple metrics.
Previously on Questions of the Day.
What's not working, what kind of data should be collected, right? Are these programs working, that sort of thing, right? So you get really into the weeds of that too. But again, I think the policy is a big component of that too. And what do we want to see as far as policy changes in institutions, but then also, right, how are trainees being impacted by the current landscape and all the funding cuts and everything, right? So that bigger landscape, which I think we didn't really anticipate when we started, right? It was sort of like, okay, this collect.
Subscribe to access that conversation and many.
Stephanie, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you again.
So we are the 2025 ASTC conference.
Yes.
It's my first time, and I hear it's also your first time.
My first time.
Wow. Tell us, why did you decide to attend this conference? And you're presenting too. So.
Yes. Well, it actually came from a partnership. So the Plenary is partnering with Seeding Action, which is a part of ASTC that focuses on planetary health. Mm-hmm. And so we are doing a tour. It's called the What Could Be Tour. And they wanted to partner, think about how we might be able to adapt this tour to bring more civic imagination into some of the science and tech centers across the country that are part of the ASTC network. So we thought about how we might use this conference as a bit of a launch pad for that tour.
Yeah, to make connections, because the theme is connectivity, all right? And that's the key thing. And we connected actually back in March at the Science Talk conference, right? And so I wanted to ask you this question. Some people don't know, there are these conferences that take place, right? Like this is the ACT conference, the Science Talk. What's your calculus in deciding where to go?
Oh,
right?
Because
there's like resources limitations, right? And you have your own goals as well. What goes into that calculus?
Oh, what a good question. I think for me personally, I base it a lot on the places where I think there's a specific gap in my knowledge, in my understanding of the system that we're both operating within, or if there's a specific offer that I can make to that space, or both. Oftentimes it's a little combination of both. So in this space, for example, I think it's very much both, because on the one hand, I'm working with Seeding Action to try and offer something to the community that we think might be really meaningful around imagination. So like even on our little badges here, it says imagine, that's like, I think imagination is in the air, and I really feel like we have something to bring to that conversation. At the same time, I think our science and tech centers are such a critical cross-section and heartbeat of science communication, engagement, public, whichever sort of language you are comfortable using, but it's such an important cross-section and heartbeat of that oftentimes gets separated out from the civic spaces, which I know is what you and I really connect around, is how do we bring those together? So I want to learn from the people that are here what's already being done, because I know so much is already being done. We don't want to be redundant. So what do I need to know in order to actually be useful? That's kind of how I think about it. Is this a space where I'm going to learn more about how to be useful, or is it a space where I can be a little bit useful, or both?
Right. And of course, it helps that you're just down the street, right?
Yeah, well, this one.
This is your hometown. We're in San
This one's a
Francisco.
little lazy.
That saves a little bit, right? In terms of now, we're talking about imagination and civic. You're about to launch the Civic Imagination Tour.
Yes.
Tell us about it. This is awesome to be here when you're launching it. So.
Yeah, so the Civic Imagination Tour, it's called What Could Be. It's the What Could Be Tour. And we are going across the US and we are hosting activations, dinners, gatherings at people's homes, where we are bringing together groups of people with a co-host. So every location we go to has a local co-host that is making the invitations on the ground, really understands the space, their local space. And we're bringing people together to have conversations about 4 different major issue areas. And it's an activation we've been working on and developing for quite a while now. We've been piloting it out to see how do we use some of the principles of world building and speculative narrative and speculative design to create spaces where people can tap more into imagination, tap more into their sense of what's possible. And for us, it's a little bit of a balancing act between making sure we are offering insights about what's already going on, what's possible, what's emerging, and then activating people in the room to understand that what they come up with matters, is important, is part of civic design. And so that's really what it's about. And then at the end, it's the 250th anniversary of the United States next summer. And so we thought it was the perfect opportunity to shift the focus on the people. What do the people want? And for that 250th, we're going to be taking all of the different visions that are built from across the tour and turning it into a public archive of what the people want. So marking that milestone through collective visioning. And then we're translating that into a festival called the Future of Us Festival that will be hosted here. And we will be able to have digital exhibitions and things like that can go back out to all of the people that helped to create it.
That's so cool. So activation sounds like it's a key theme in this, right? They wanted to inspiring them to think about what do I want to do, right? To tackle some issue, whatever that may be. And on your website, you have various issues that are there. So it is a multi-month long tour.
Yes. This is our soft launch at ASTC of the official tour. So October will be the full digital release because there's a couple of different ways that people can participate. We're going to be hosting the tours. ASTC network members will be invited to facilitate a version of it at their centers. And then we also are opening it up for anyone to host them at home. So we will have free downloadable materials for anyone to be able to sort of plug in, host it sort of like, you can think of it instead of a game night or a book club, and you're hosting a civic imagination gathering. And
I imagine you'll be capturing what people come up with, especially those who are being hosted at home, for example. So where are you going? You have a sense of that?
Yeah, we're going everywhere.
Everywhere?
We're going as many places as we can. And so we actually, it's interesting because we're always trying to be thoughtful about how we're approaching these types of things. And there's no right answer to how to get the best sort of cross-section of the US. As you know, it's not going to be fully representative. It can't be. But we want to do the best that we can to try and get different regions represented in the storytelling. So we did a sort of cultural breakdown by region. We looked across different models for how do you actually break up the US into cultural regions. And so our goal is to make sure we're hosting a meaningful number of dinners in each cultural region of the United States. So, for example, the South, where I'm from, that's its own special region. And you could argue there's a lot of regions in there, but we want to make sure we're getting at least some hosted activations in each spot. So.
It's cultural areas. I like that. And of course, capacity is a challenge, right? It can be everywhere, right? But so I like the idea that you're breaking up into clusters and you're seeing how this performs, right? And this is it's always an experiment. You want to learn, right? Something. What's the key thing you want to learn from this? You want to get the activations, right? Where people want to activate and so on. What else do you want to learn from this tour?
So we've been piloting this for a while, and we've hosted a lot of dinners. We've hosted 250 plus people at these dinners so far. Some of them across a pretty wide range of sort of civic agency and engagement. Some folks vote and that's it. Other folks are really, really deeply engaged with the issues. It's been fascinating to see how different people respond to a setting like this. Because a lot of the people, they're not signing up. One of the important ingredients here is they're not signing up for this, right? This is not like an opt-in thing. This is your friend in your local community says, hey, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to come do this with me? And because of our program with I Am a Scientist, we have relationships with teachers and educators and folks in 1,600 cities across the United States.
Okay.
So we have a sort of nice sort of pool of people that may not always opt into these things to choose from. So some of the people that show up, they've never done anything like this. And for me, I think one of the things that fascinates me, it's been fascinating to watch so far.
Yeah.
I'm just obsessed with the question of how, like, what are the components, what are the conditions we can create that gets somebody to sort of turn into this mode of my voice matters, my imagination matters. I can be a co-creator, a co-generator of what happens next. Recognizing the limits to that. Like, we're not naive. We understand how stuck a lot of our systems are, but we also understand how fast systems have shifted in the past when there's enough public agency and pressure to move them.
Yeah.
So we're really interested in understanding what are those conditions, what works, what gets people excited, what gets them inspired. Because I think, a lot of the pushback we get for programs like this is, yeah, but like, what's the deliverable? Like, what's the outcome at the end? And I think one of the things we keep coming back to is all of the work that we've been trying to do has to be built on a foundation of engagement, of agency, of inspiration, of trust that we don't have right now. So it's not about any one specific outcome. It's about creating a different kind of civic culture that can support a wide range of engagements and activations. And when we're doing each of these dinners, each of these activations, we're watching and we're seeing, what are those conditions? What is that culture that we can sort of invest in to inspire and engage as many people?
I love that. Let's take a break.
SciComm is a communications company built for scientists by me, a scientist. SciComm works directly with academic researchers, tech companies, nonprofits, and any scientist to create clear, engaging, scientifically accurate media. Whether you need a whiteboard video to teach your audience something new, an animated explainer video that breaks down your complex work into something that's easier to understand, visually compelling slides for an upcoming presentation, a blog article to inform your readers of the latest research in your field, or even just a simple illustration, SciComm is your communications partner. Simplify your science with SciComm.
So we were talking offline about prompting, because the host, essentially, you give them 3 prompts, I believe you told me, and then they get to invite the people. You don't have a say in terms of who they invite. Tell us about those prompts.
Yeah, so one of our big goals and core beliefs in all of this is that every single person living in the United States should have a say in what happens next. And so one of the things we tell people is everyone is qualified to participate in this. And our job is to make them comfortable. So when we ask a co-host to make the invitations, it's up to them. We don't choose who's invited.
Hands off.
Yeah, we're hands off. We're like, this is your party. Our job is to come in and make it a meaningful experience. And so we give them 3 prompts for how to think about who to invite. Tell them, it's no pressure. These are just prompts. The first is make it intergenerational if you can. We love bringing people together across generations. Try to get people that are open. We want to get a wide range of perspectives and sort of political views. This is not about current politics. It's about future building.
Right.
But we like to get a sort of wide range of open idea sharing across the sort of spectrums as they are. And then the third is ask people who don't get asked very often what they want and what's important to them. I think, we can oftentimes be driven by the loudest voices, and their voices matter too. They're not the only voices that matter. We want to make sure we're bringing in some of the people who may not often be asked what they see for the future.
And what I'm seeing as you're talking is you're building these co-creative spaces, right? And then you asked the question earlier, like, how do we, what makes them thrive? Because you're learning from doing this, right? Some of them don't work. And you're like, hey, what happened there? What happened there? And what can we do there? So on that note, we talked last time in our chat about ripple metrics, right? And how you can imagine there's so many ripple metrics from this work. Can you give us a sense? What are you guys thinking about? Are there examples you can share of the holes that you're seeing?
And I think, we've talked about this a lot, where for us, when we're measuring something, what we really want to understand, we want to sense the system. We want to sense what is actually going on in this space. And so when we approach ripple metrics, I think I mentioned Astrid County is the researcher on our team who really helped to sort of sculpt this. She's a data anthropologist. And one of the things we led with was, all right, when we take a step back and we think about network science, and we think about complex systems, and we think about emergence, and we think about how historically things have actually meaningfully shifted? What are the signals, and how might we begin to approximate and measure those signals in our own work? And so we had some real conversations that don't really fit into the sort of typical maybe scientific frameworks, maybe more anthropological frameworks. But so for example, for our Illuminations exhibition, we wanted to know how people were really receiving the space. What was the impact that it was having on them? How do you do that? You can ask them for feedback, but even that, you're forcing sort of complex thought into linear feedback. They know we're going to read it. That's very filtered. I love it. It's helpful, and I want more. So who knows what's going on in the space better than anyone? Bartenders. We tapped the bartenders in the space. We talked to them ahead of time. We sort of prompted them and gave them a sense like what to look for, although they do it anyway. And they noticed so much that we never did.
Right.
So then afterwards, we talked to them. What did you see? What were some of the stories that stood out? What was the buzz? What were the good things? What were the points of friction? What were the things that you were igniting that you feel like are things that we should follow? Sort of signals that we should chase. And we got so much rich insight from talking to the people who could see from within the system.
Anything in particular that comes to
Oh
mind?
my gosh. Well, I think one of the biggest ones that they told us about that we wouldn't have caught otherwise was how effective. So we had these little pins. When people arrived, they chose a different pin color, and each one represented one of the different sort of themes in the space. And a lot of people chose all of them, but you can choose whatever you want. Free will. And so people would choose them. And one of the things the bartenders told us was that became such a powerful tool for meeting strangers. And that people would come up and say, oh, you've got a purple pin. A bunch of purple pins are going over there to talk about AI or whatever it was. It became this facilitative tool where you've just been in a space where you've been able to experience a lot of art, a lot of storytelling. Now you want to talk about it. Good. That's what we want too. And they basically were sharing with us how effective the pins were as a tool for people to find each other in the space.
And they could see it in real time.
The
connections being made.
Exactly. And it was very spontaneous.
Right.
And that was one thing. Another thing that they noticed was friends who would talk to each other, because it's not always talking to the bartender. They noticed friends talking to each other about ideas and saying things along the lines of, there's these two guys in particular, where one of the guys said that he had been friends with these guys since college and had no idea that his friend thought about deep things too. But it's amazing to create an environment where you can learn that about your friend. You're going home and thinking about the same stuff that I am, but we haven't had a space where we can really sort of discover and uncover that in each other comfortably. Which we could have a whole other conversation on those forces. But those are the sorts of things that come from the bartender reports, which it doesn't have to be bartenders, but it's really thinking about who in your system is getting real, meaningful, deep social insight into what's actually happening in this space.
That's in helping your sense making, right? Local understanding. That's what is happening.
Exactly. And then from there, it gives us little indicators sometimes of things we can chase. There's other tools that we use. So one of the things that we really like doing is the team is trained to look for things, to sort of notice when is there a sort of energy building that we want to chase and follow. So for example, and sometimes it's very easy. Sometimes they come to us. So for example, Jasmine McAdams, who is a researcher at UC Berkeley, and she really played an instrumental role in this happening and this coming to life. And after going through these community sandboxes that we hosted and coming to the show, she decided she wanted to shift her dissertation to be about this work, to explore more deeply how do we create these creative, generative community spaces in service of civic renewal and civic life. So that is a hell of a ripple. To know that somebody could have come to one of these things, and then who knows what she'll do with that research from there. So you can imagine there's the goal of understanding the system as it is for whatever the project is that we're working on. And then the next goal is understanding what's coming out of it and how do we chase those for as long as it takes.
And beyond the traditional metrics, because I think this is the key, where you have bartenders who are observing. They're noticing things that are hard to say in a survey, to sort of say, okay, maybe we can ask them, oh, how many connections do you see people make? But you can say, okay, free yourself. Just observe.
Right. And a lot of it is, these tools, similar tools have been used in a lot of social sciences and a lot of different forms of scholarship, but they're not oftentimes uplifted in the kind of work that you and I have done in the past, and they get sidelined. And I think that's one of the things too, is when we think about ripple metrics and when we think about how to create a meaningful sense-making tool so we actually know what's going on, especially when we're doing more cultural work, we've got to look across the fields. What do other fields use? You know, like for example, tonight we're doing a ASTC what could be dinner, and we're going to have photo documentation as part of it. What's called PhotoVoice in a lot of disciplines.
So people attending will be able to.
People attending will be invited. They'll have instant cameras, and they'll be invited to capture what feels meaningful and important to them throughout the experience, and that becomes an artifact. And I think artifacts are a really important part of ripple metrics. Is what are the physical artifacts and forms that come out of a space that are community participant generated, and then how do we make meaning from them so that we can better understand the sort of currents that are happening in the system. Not just
currents.
Yeah.
Is there a dream ripple metric that you
There a
like,
dream
like that you think about? It's like we could like track this or keep monitor this. It'll be fascinating for us.
You know, I think it's really interesting because even when you say the word monitor and track, I noticed that I had like a, oh, no, that's not the thing response to it, which is interesting because I think one of the things we're trying to capture in all of this is if you wanted to teach your child about an ecosystem, it wouldn't just be through sort of like linear tracking. You wouldn't just say cause and effect. You would walk them through the woods. You would show them maybe under a microscope what's going on in the leaves and chlorophyll and how bugs interact and how you pick up the soil and compare it to dirt. You would tell stories. You might share poetry. You might explore it through literature. If you want to understand an ecosystem, you need those sort of like things that we're tracking, but you also need to respect deeply and understand the importance of sensing space. And I think I'm a neuroscientist by training, you know, like I know your background is science, like I get it. I know we want to be concrete, but not a lot of movements throughout the history of this country have been rooted in designing for data outcomes. They've been rooted in emergence and cultural signal. So I think it's important to sort of like say, yes, let's pick some signals we really do want to sort of track. Like for example, Jasmine, the director of the environment department for San Francisco came to that event, and it led to all of these engagements and partnerships down the road. That's an important metric for us to follow and understand that sort of cultural ripple, opportunity ripple. But we also need to lean into the artifacts. We need to lean into the stories. We need to lean into the sort of other sense-making tools available to us. So I think my dream ripple metrics system is a framework that is invested in and believed in and supported, that is interested in seeing the whole ecosystem and investing in the researchers and the sort of observers to be able to have the tools that they need to do that.
Well, I mean, part of this is the importance of time, right, to make that sense-making process.
Exactly. Right? We were just talking about how a redwood grove as an example, and like you can describe the grove, you can be in a 4D immersive experience and stand at the base of a image of that redwood grove. You don't understand it fully until you're in the space and you smell the air and you feel the air. And that kind of sense making, it takes time. Like you said, it takes a tremendous amount of time. It takes investing in time. It takes patience. It takes letting go of a little bit of control so that we can pay attention and notice things that we didn't plan to notice.
And that's what I think with the space of these spaces you bring people to do, right? I'm assuming this is what they're doing. They're there, they're sensing, they're hearing other people, right? They're making new connections and new ideas come out of it.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the internal sense-making piece. And then we have to apply that same degree of patience and openness and when we notice a signal and we just want to chase it to understand, okay, what did this thing actually accomplish? We have to have that same degree of openness and patience and creativity.
Right.
And give ourselves the time to say, oh, okay, I didn't expect, a UC Berkeley researcher to be sparked by this and for that to potentially be one of the spinoffs.
Right.
But we need to be open to it and understand that that's meaningful and then follow it in a meaningful way so that we can see what comes of it if we really want to understand the impact of the work that we're doing.
I think you should write about this process. The ripple metrics and how you're thinking about it, because you are publishing these in case studies. We were talking offline about these.
In all of our impact reports, we do a lot of sort of a wide range. We were talking too about like how you still need the science. Like if you want to really deeply understand the redwood groves, you need to do soil analysis. You really want the depths of understanding. Let's use the tools that we have, absolutely, and figure out the best cross section of those tools for our particular projects to really understand it. and understand how it changes. But yeah, I think the other piece of it is we need to create frameworks together that we can share, that we can all sort of say, you know what, look, we get how it's been done. We are not where we want to be. How it's been done didn't work. Let's talk about how it could be. We need like a what could be of like how we're actually measuring.
Because a lot of stuff, it doesn't work, right? Some
Right.
stuff just doesn't work.
Right.
And that's okay because you're learning something from that. Even in these ripple metrics, they're dead ends.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Where we're like, okay, well, that's where that ripple ended. Yeah. And there's other people doing this work and we need to be talking to each other.
Right.
There's other people who are thinking in similar ways and we really need to sort of find some convergence points. And when you talk about like what conferences, to go full circle, like what conferences matter, when there's a sort of threshold of people coming together, like you and I and the other people that are thinking about these questions coming together, there's nothing like physical space shared for us to be able to really figure out what can come, what you're thinking, what I'm thinking, what so-and-so are thinking, especially when they're in different fields. Because I know there's philanthropists thinking this way. I know that there's community builders thinking this way. And us all coming together to figure out, okay, how do we coalesce? How do we build this together? Yeah. Is really important. And then, of course, I'm started to publish on Substack at Civic Being. And I think it's important that we all give ourselves some platforms and take up some space. It took me 10 years to decide to finally start putting these things out there because, as a founder, as a director, who has the time?
Yeah, I mean, you're doing this now, even for that, doing this interview right now, exactly, right? Sharing that, the insights.
We have to. Yeah, we all, every single voice.
It's how we collaborate, right?
How we find each other.
Find each other, how we collaborate, how we learn from each other. There's just so much in there. What's the hardest part about ripple metrics to close this out? So is it explaining to the funders what they are or just finding the money to do it because it's really time intensive? What is it?
I think a little bit of both. So it is time intensive. It takes resources to support, not as many as you'd expect because there's so many different variations of it. You can do a very lightweight ripple metric approach. Hiring the bartenders and invest and bringing them onto the team in that way, that's not that massive of an investment. So there's always sort of like tools you can use that are lower cost. But then to do it the way you want to, you can imagine more people, more time, more funding. But I think the other piece of it is people are stuck in inertial systems of sense making, and that can be incredibly limiting. And so, yes, to your point, explaining to some of the more institutional crystallized funders why this matters and also why these outcomes are meaningful, why we don't need to limit ourselves to these like perfect little boxes of action deliverable, and that in culture making and culture building, actually that might be doing us a disservice. That's hard because a lot of folks, that's what they've known their whole career, and I don't begrudge them because it's hard. It's hard to let go of that control and figure out, okay, well then how do we even know if something's working? If we don't have the simple numbers for it. So it's like a whole sort of mindset that we have to embrace.
Yeah. So you have to explain that to the funders and journals, I guess. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And we have to invite them into that process because, we're figuring it out too. And like I said, some of them already are. And that gets me really excited when I see, a philanthropy report saying like, hey, we need to invest in communities. We need to invest in coalitions. Like you and I were talking earlier about this, how as philanthropists are trying to figure out how to restructure right now, as foundations are trying to figure out how to restructure right now, they're still using a lot of like the old strategies to try to figure out how to restructure for a new world. And I think one of the best things that you can do is trust the people who've been doing the work. And if like we talked about before, like a lot of us, we all have a lot of ideas of how this could work better. Trusting us that we might be onto something, giving us a chance to really try that out. Let's see. The old tools weren't working. Let's try some new ones.
I wish we can just keep chatting like this. We've continued our conversation about the ripples. I love the fact that even tonight you're going to be tracking them and observing them. Shall we say? Tracking gets into the whole.
No, we need both, right? We need both.
Yes.
We need the tracking. We need the metrics. We need the basics.
Yeah.
And we need to sort of expand our understanding of how systems move and what signals indicate that movement.
And I want to, last time I asked you the same question about opportunities to collaborate. I can imagine lots of them. Now, people are watching this later. You're at the ASTC. Clearly, you're about to begin this tour. Yeah. Is there one opportunity or something new opportunity window that has come up since we last chatted that you want to tell people?
Yeah, well, I mean, we are actively looking for funders and sponsors to support the tour.
Okay.
So that even if it's in a specific location that you want us to come to, we're really excited about that opportunity. And then co-hosts. So if anybody can reach out and either say, hey, I want to co-host one in my area, in my home,
Okay.
or you can do it yourself. You can decide and reach out. We'll make sure you get the materials. We'll go live in October, all the digital downloadables. But anyone can participate in this. And that's the point. The more voices that we can bring into the fold, the better the sense that we're going to have of what are the visions that are actually shared in this country. So when we hit that 250th anniversary, we're not just marking that milestone by looking at the past, which is important, but we're also marking it by looking at the future and what people actually want.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Till next time.
Till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.